Should be. I'm just double checking. There we go.
All right. See if I see it. Hey, there we are.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are here just before all of us. Are you going to the conference, Ayla?
I'm not going.
Boo.
Ah,
Okay. So
Sad
boo.
good.
face.
I know. Boo. Well, Michael and I are prepping to go to the conference, and we were just chit-chatting about lots of fun stuff that we have going on for that. So here we are before that, and we have what I am super excited about is we have Ayla here to talk with us about probably a lot of different directions we can go in, but certainly I'm interested in your work in residential treatment and how you're incorporating and understanding and just the process of digital play therapy for you. But before we get to all of that, I would love it if you could tell our listeners just a little bit about who you are and what you do. And um, I know for me, we have had so much fun playing in game night and just being in a really connecting and fun environment together. But we haven't had a whole lot of time talking about what it is that you do. So if you could introduce yourself a little bit, then we can start getting into it.
Yeah, great. So, my name is Ayla, and I am the clinical director at a psychiatric facility here in Virginia that deals with kids ages 5 to 14. So, really a younger population. I'm also a primary therapist for a lot of the kiddos there, and I did do some outpatient therapy up until recently, just with my change in my roles took up a lot of time, so I wanted to be able to make sure I could focus on the kids that that were at the facility.
Absolutely. Great. And what has your journey been into using digital tools in your work? You have a big age range there. You have a really, I want to say specialized population. And there's a lot of variability in there, but there's specialized approaches and methods that usually go along with your environment. So I'm curious to know what your path has been.
So I've always played video games, and when I could realize that I could incorporate them into therapy because that's the language of our kids nowadays, that's what I started doing. So it's really interesting because a lot of younger kids, so like our 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, they're not very good at like the platformer things. But if I find simple ones like Yoshi, I use that to build mastery and for them to build that confidence because a lot of those kids have like 98% of our population has a extensive trauma and abuse history.
Mhm.
So a lot of them feel really down about themselves. Um, so using like those platformer models for our younger kiddos on the easier side. And then, of course, Minecraft to allow them to kind of do what they want to do and have that virtual world, if you will. And then older ones, I've used Zelda and harder platformers to try to help them work through those challenges and then transfer those virtual challenges to real life challenges.
Michael, you feel like she's speaking your language a bit over there?
Yeah, I mean, like all the games that she's, sharing, I definitely hear, similar, kind of clinical stories and also personal stories. And it's so true. In fact, there's even a game that had recently dropped on Nintendo Switch, and I'm so excited to try it out, and I'll geek out for you guys. But it's called Tunic, and it's almost a Zelda-like, and it's kind of like almost like a fox, and he's running around with a shield and a sword. But what I find really interesting about it is that everything inside the game is just completely like just language that like isn't an official language that anyone speaks in the whole world. And so there's like a manual guide that you have to look and you have to memorize basically a lot of things based on pictures and symbols. And that's how you solve a lot of the puzzles in the game. And I'm like thinking to myself, and I'm like, man, that is so interesting because it mirrors so many things about life, like so many things that we encounter for the first time feels like a foreign language. So many situations when we're growing up, and the only thing that we can identify things by, is pictures or making some sort of context of what we're seeing. And so I really love that idea of, and I can't wait to kind of play the game and try it out, because a lot of people are saying it's so so difficult, even when you go to the shop and you're buying power ups and things like that, you have to just kind of like go and do trial by error to figure out what it actually does, because it doesn't give you a description of what it actually does.
That sounds really frustrating. And I could totally see a lot of my older clients, like, that being an area just in itself, learning that new language, um, of working through that frustration. But I think I'm excited. I'm going to put that on my grab list. I have like a whole list of things. I just added oblets. I don't know if you guys have played that, but I recently started to play it and I adore it. Um, and I can't wait to start that with some of my clients. But yeah, like working through that frustration. I'm gonna put that on my list. You said it was called Tunic? Okay.
Yep.
I have, I don't know how to pronounce it. You said oblets. I was saying ooblets. I don't know what the
Maybe
correct.
ooblets. I don't know.
I don't really
Ooblets,
know.
oblets.
I haven't heard it spoken. Uh, my I haven't gotten too far in it yet. I'm curious to know what you are really liking about it. I think part of my response to it is that it has that like Sims like speaking in it. And that bothered me in Sims and it bothers me in this. So maybe if I just turn off the volume, it'll be fine. I don't know. It's like it's kind of I don't like musicals. I know that probably makes a lot of people upset, but I don't like musicals because I either want you to speak or I want you to sing. I don't want you to do both. I don't like it. And I don't know why. I just click, I'll just change the channel. And in this, it's like speak and speak a language that is actually a language, or don't speak gibberish. And I don't mean that sounds wrong, because I don't mean like a language I don't understand in terms of another French, German,
Mhm.
Portuguese. Like I don't mean that. Like if it's spoken in an actual different language and I don't understand it, then I just have to figure that out. But this is, I don't know, whatever it is. I'm sure there's a word for it, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That
Yeah,
sim
yeah,
type
yeah, yeah,
language.
yeah. I do. And in this game, there is a lot of music. I mean, the battles are dance battles, so
Yep.
there's tons of music.
I
That's actually
like
one aspect
music.
yeah,
I
that's
like
one
music,
aspect I
and
do like.
I've done a little bit of the dance battling and stuff like that. So I mean, yes, I that part I don't know. I don't know. I think what I'm going to do is if you think that it's got a lot of good stuff in it, then I'll keep going, but I'm just going to turn the volume down. But
Um,
I think that's part of a big piece of digital play therapy, though, is that there are going to be people who are going to have different responses to different things. And if you understand what the components of it, like for the dance battles, you probably want the music on. But so if I was your client, then it would be important for you to know that, oh, hey, this person doesn't really like these aspects. How can we work through that and still meet the therapeutic goals? Or even as the therapist, how do you I could manage listening to that for the session because I'm focused on what is needed for the client. And that's not the same as if I'm playing it personally, but I think it's important for us, and I speak about this in terms of virtual reality all the time, is know what the settings are, know what your controls are, what aspects of the gameplay that you might be able to change or manipulate in some way. And then also on top of it, know what the therapeutic value is in the different interactions, so that if there is some way it needs to be changed back or changed in some way to optimize that, then it's our job as therapists to explore those things so that we can do the best for our clients.
I mean, yeah, that's in any aspect, like in any modality that we use. There
Yeah.
might be kids that aren't really into the movement therapy or whatever the case is, and they're like, I don't like moving. This is not for me. But maybe finding a movement that they do like. because I use a lot of different modalities in the residential setting because we are on 270 acres.
Mm.
So we're like on this massive space, and so we have a lot of ability. We have animals there. So, and they do equine therapy and art therapy and movement and music and sort of other stuff. So I've been trying to introduce the digital into our setting. And I have had some resistance from people that don't like necessarily line up or don't see the value in it there. But I think I look at it like when play therapy was first introduced, people looked at it and like, what kind of therapy is that? You're just playing. But if that's what the kid is speaking, then you have to meet them where they're at with what language they are, what they need. And recently, I think that when I say recently, I mean in this past month, I think I've had some more openness with other people that have had those challenges because they saw a client be successful through that. I mean,
I
this
was
client
about to
just
ask, what do you think the
yeah.
shift was? But it sounds
And
like
that's what it was because I set these limits. So I helped this client because this client had a lot of anger and a lot of stuff. I mean, everything. This kid had been through a lot of tough stuff. And where he felt the most peace was through video games. And he hated therapy. He hated traditional therapy. He hated the idea of coming to talk to somebody. I mean, for the first 4 months, he'd come in every session and just cuss me out 3 times a week, 30 minutes. I'm every name in the book, except anything nice. But then I was like, you know what? Let me try to use what he has. And we did, and we worked a lot through Zelda, actually.
Breath of the Wild, or which? Yep.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild. And he got to where he had beat the whole game and was getting like the master sword and trying to do all those things. And he learned to depend on me to be that person that he can ask for help. And he would never ask anybody for help. I mean, adults were trash. Adults were somebody who he could never trust. And now he'd come to me and be like, I have a to-do list. Can you help me? And I'm like, man, yeah, I can.
It's huge. Yeah, I don't think we emphasize enough in our work how phenomenal it is when a person who does not trust others gets to the point where they can ask for help. And I see that so much more in digital play therapy than I do in traditional play therapy. And I think to myself, well, why is that? What's the difference? And I think I don't know all the answers to what the differences are, but I do think one aspect is that for particular people, this is such a highly motivating activity that they really want to play it. Then they see how you interact with them through playing it, and that forms this space of safety and acceptance that I think can be really unique for some of these clients. And then they allow themselves to step out of their comfort zone a bit and ask us for help. And then, of course, if we're helpful, I don't want people to think helpful means that you have to have all the answers. Sometimes it's not that we have all the answers. Sometimes we do. We're like, oh, just go over there and,
I've never actually played the game. So I had zero answers. I had zero answers. I had just seen my son play it, my husband play it, and we went online and we did walkthroughs, and I was just being a support person.
Yep, that's what I was just about to say. Is sometimes it's not, you have to have all the answers, because I hear that a lot when I'm teaching and when I'm speaking to people. It's there's so much. How are we supposed to know everything? How do we know every game? How do we know everything about every game? That's just, it's too much. It's too much. And it's like, you don't have to know that. It's quite all right to say to your client, I don't know, but let's figure it out. And then now you're also role modeling how to ask for help, how to join together, how to seek resources, how to use those resources. There's so many pieces to that. And then how to apply it. Okay, we identified what the concerns are or the questions or whatever it might be. We sought out the answers, the resources, the guidance, all those things. And now we're going to take that information and now we're going to apply it. Like, life. Isn't that what we do in life? It's huge. So I just wanted to really highlight that point that you made, because him asking you for help was an enormous and a really big shifting moment, I would say, in your work together. And so if other people were watching that and saw, whoa, how did you make that happen? Then I can see how they would notice things a little differently.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I would have people that would be walking by, hear him cussing at me, and then all of a sudden he didn't cuss so much. And he didn't cuss so much in general when he was at school or in the group home. And then he was asking other staff for help for like simpler things, like, hey, I'm really upset. Can I just have a moment alone? Like, just being able to put that in other aspects of life. And then, it felt good for me because I'm like, you see, digital play therapy works. But at the same time, it was like, it actually works. And this kid, I mean, since he was like 6, he's been in treatment, and he's like 12 or something. So a lot of time in different settings. And it's just finally, I was able to find that thing that worked for him. And now I was able to tell his parents that, and his parents are able to find that in an outpatient setting or something similar. And, it's not just games.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about that particular game that you think spoke to him, how he approaches things, how he moves through this world. Like, what do you think it was about Legends of Zelda Breath of the Wild?
I think that because it's challenging, but it's also like it has its side missions, but you're also free to explore. You can kind of go at your own pace. There's no like, you want to get this and you want to get this and you want to get this. He was able to kind of pick and choose what shrine he wanted to find or what he wanted to do next at his own pace. And then be able to have, like, I call it like a new game plus, if you will, where you can keep playing after you beat the game, and kind of there's a new game to it, different challenges that come up. And I think that's what it was, that he was able to feel that he did well at it, but also know that he could ask for help and not feel dumb. I don't know if that makes sense.
I definitely think it does.
Okay.
I I have not beaten the game. I played it quite a bit with a few clients for a while, and we played it, I think, a little differently than what it sounds like you all did. We played it with each one of us having a controller. So one person is walking or whatever, and the other person is looking, as for instance, then there are different things that each controller does. And so I played it quite a bit for a while there. And there really are so many aspects to that game that I think are useful for a number of the different approach styles, communication styles, the interactions that can happen or not, the battles that can happen or not. Does the person spend the entire session out there trying to tame horses?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they in there trying to complete a certain quest or reach a certain shrine or whatever, go into the village and interact with people, whatever it is? There are so many different interactions that are possible in that game that I think it's very useful for a wide umbrella of people, which I think is great. We have some games, it's just like any other intervention in our playrooms, that we have some things that are really pointed to a particular client. I remember looking for quite some time for a particular miniature for my traditional sand tray setup because I had a certain client that I knew this would be pivotal for. Other people use it, but that the purpose really was, very specific. And then we have other items that really are quite global and, a larger umbrella that more people. So I think in digital play therapy, it's the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just parallels to be made in so many different directions of something you get because this particular client has these things going on, you think it's going to be perfect for them, or it's something that, maybe a lot of people can get something out of playing that, and it won't be the same for everybody who plays it, which is great.
it wouldn't be the same. Like there were certain days and certain aspects where he was in his treatment. And because in this setting, you know, I see him 3 times a week.
Right.
And he would only play it in my office. So it's not like a kid that can go back home and just say, oh, well, I'm going to keep playing this. I'm going to do my own game.
Right.
As he got further along, closer to discharge, he did have a Switch that was available to him. And he would bring his Switch into session and say, I want to work on this aspect with you. And for real, that makes me like so happy, because he would never, he didn't historically do that.
Absolutely.
But you know, like he could only work on that aspect when he was with me when he was first starting. And I think that that's kind of different about the residential setting, because, you know, although they have video games in the group home, you know, take turns and you have to be on certain stages. And, you know, there's certain, it's more of a privilege type thing as opposed to just a kid that goes home, okay, pay 30 minutes of whatever. So it made it that much more special too, that he could do video games, if you will, in the therapy office. Yeah.
I think one thing that's really helpful, just tying back to that motivation aspect that you were speaking about, utilizing these things. And I constantly always think about, if we think of kids that are playing video games and they are having, things that are very difficult, whether it's at home or school, oftentimes they're going to be more drawn to these, platforms because there is aspects of them that, make them happy, or they can work through things. And oftentimes naturally they're going to be more drawn to that. So then, us as adults, we may look at that and go, oh, you should only want to spend time with that. So we're taking away their coping skill away from them. And when they come to therapy and you have, therapists like yourself that is open to this idea, and not only are you open to it, but you're saying like there's a lot of value in it, there's a lot of strengths, talking about like a strength model. Let's figure out, what is it about, this type of environment that creates so many, fun memories for you, or skills that you hone, kind of like this idea of harvesting that kind of psychological capital, they talk about from playing games, and having it spill over to the rest of their, everyday life, like you were mentioning, with this kiddo. And I think that aspect of you just being open and saying, not only am I open to it, but, I think there's a lot of value in here. You are telling him that a huge part of his life matters to you, which is, this aspect of, exploring these games and, finding out, new aspects of himself and working on himself, which I think is different than the traditional model at some points.
And something that I think a lot of people don't understand is really a central part of using these tools in therapy. That it makes me think of way back when Anna Freud was using that, she would use play therapy materials as icebreakers. She did not, at least from what I have read and learned, she did not use them in a way of looking at the therapeutic aspects of the actual interaction within the use of whatever those tools were. It was a more of an enticement. Let's have this feel fun for the client or patient, probably to her at that time, to want to come, and then we'll do the therapy. And then over time it's shifted, right, of where us recognizing, hey, wait a minute, there really are important things that are happening within these interactions themselves, not as an icebreaker, as an enticement. If it has those qualities to it, then great. But really it's more about what can we learn about the client? What do we know already? What are we learning? How does it come together? How do we help guide them? How does that generalize out into the rest of their lives? Kind of like what you were talking about. Your client's asking for help in Zelda, and then all of a sudden is saying, hey, I just need a minute. I'm having a rough time right now. Or that's recognition, and that's also asking for something from someone else. And both of those are really enormous aspects of what I hope we would get from a person being in therapy, is that learn some of those fundamental skills and generalize those out into the rest of their lives. Um, what I'm trying to really emphasize along the way, not just right now, is the importance of the interactions themselves and the therapeutic value for us as therapists to understand them more and then to intervene or to process whatever we're doing in the session, but then also for the client, so many opportunities for practice, for understanding, for role modeling, for cause and effect, for critical thinking, for strategic thinking, for frustration tolerance, all kinds of things. That's not even a complete list, but all kinds of things that we focus on.
The list
And
is forever.
right, I know. I just keep going and going, and anyone who listens to this knows that I can just keep going and going. So I want to also focus for a moment on the chat, because I'm not sure that you have it up, Ayla, but I just want you to know you've got like some people in the chat who are responding to things that you were saying, like earlier when you were talking about your client and figuring it out together, and then the word huge in caps. So clearly you said something that really spoke to Play Geek there. But it's put in quotes, it's not just gaming and it's not just play, and that there are so many different ways to play. And then again, when you were talking about your client, she said, see, he knew the power. and so clearly your example is really speaking to her and highlighting a lot of these aspects of what it is that you're doing.
Because it was really frustrating for a while there, because the person that I had the most adversity with in this setting was one who was very well respected. And so we were kind of on this little standoff of, oh, this needs to be limited. Oh, they need to be outside more. Look at the setting that we're in. And I was like, yeah, we are in a great setting, but that's not what he needs right now. And what he needs is what I'm presenting him. And being able to put that in his treatment plan, and being able to say, through play, we're working on this goal and this goal, and this goal showed improvement, and look, he's not in any restraints anymore, and like he's not having any suicidal thoughts, and he feels a lot better about himself. And it all started through me understanding him, because he was never understood, and he had zero, I mean, this kid had zero trust, zero faith in adults. And then he learned I think through Zelda, that, hey, look, I can ask an adult for help. They can tell me they don't know. We can figure it out together. And then I'm successful.
Absolutely. And I imagine, I don't know how long people typically stay with you there in the residential treatment center, but I imagine that there are great opportunities for that to be very customizable, as Play Geek in the chat is saying, for it to be prescriptive. So either in phases along the treatment, or interwoven throughout, you have the ability that if they come in that day, they really do need to go outside and run, or do some cartwheels, or just lay in the grass and cry, or whatever it is they need, then you have that. And then if on a given day, then they are really highly motivated to play Zelda, then you can do that, or anywhere in between of whatever other options you have. But I think a lot of people get worried that once you introduce digital something, that's all the kid's going to want to do. And they go by the stereotype of the kid in the basement on their computer, not interacting with others, and that whole stereotype, which I don't bring up to perpetuate, because I don't like that at all. I think people worry that, oh, we're going to just mirror that in therapy, and the therapist can be sitting there and the client's going to just be playing something, and there's not going to be interaction, and that's all they're ever going to want to do. I'm curious of your experience of that. I know that is not my experience at all. I'll have clients come in, and just like they would with any other tool, and Michael and I joke all the time, and we have for years, that we just want to tattoo on us like just another tool, is that just like anything else, it goes in what, in waves isn't really the right word, but I believe that they use any particular tool, whether it's puppets or it's dollhouse or it's sand tray or it's VR or it's something on the iPad or Switch. I believe they use it as long as they need it.
Yeah,
And
no,
for
yeah.
whatever it is they're working through or processing or understanding or creating or sharing or whatever that is. And once it feels complete, then they go to something else. And a lot of times interwoven in there are non-digital interventions. And I'll have them really focused on playing something like Legends of Zelda, and then you can, if you're really in tune and you're really paying attention, understand your client well, understand the program well, and what's happening in the interactions, then you can see it coming. You can see it that they're almost done working through that. Like, I wonder what they're going to switch to next, because you can see that it's coming. Has that been your experience? Because you're shaking.
Yeah. Yes, no, totally. So I've had like a bunch of kids, so the way I have my office set up is my kids, if they would like to do a digital intervention, they just have to ask me and then I'll bring it out. I don't leave that out, obviously, because it's expensive and our kids can sometimes enter my office in a not so happy mood. So for those types of reasons, but I have dolls set up in a dollhouse and a sand tray and a bunch of board games and just like a chill corner and puppets and things like that. And there are some kids that know that that the digital option is there that day, and they choose just to go with the puppets, and then they just start playing with the puppets, and the puppet is telling me a story about whatever the case may be, and that's what they choose to do. And then when they're done with that, like it might be in the middle of the session or it might be a couple sessions later, they'll go back to whatever else they want to do. But yeah, no, it doesn't restrict them at all, or limit them. There's kids where like, Miss Ayla, it's really nice outside. Can we go outside? I want to spend some time with the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Building that non-human relationship, and then through that building supportive human relationships and things like that. Because we have chickens, we have everything.
Sounds like a fantastic environment for people to come to heal, and then hopefully,
Yeah, it really is. Like I've been working in this setting, like this specific facility, for a really long time. When I was still an undergrad, I was like a direct care staff, so working in the houses, and it's so, and we have trails obviously with everything. So it's very nice. It's very unique.
Mm-hmm.
Very unique, and it really shows that a kid can heal through any mode. They just have to have the right support.
We have a comment in the chat that this makes me want to come and visit and tour. Come and check it out.
It's fantastic. I mean, I know I say that because I'm working there, but I really do like it. And of course, every place has its challenges. But to go back to answer your question, for our average length of stay is about 9 to 12 months. Sometimes it's a little shorter. Sometimes it's a little longer, depending on family situations and things like that, or the treatment of the kid. But as in any setting, if you're doing something and there's no growth, then maybe it's not the right thing.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I worked in residential a very long time ago, but, and I mean, was I done with school? No, I don't think I'd finished my dissertation yet. So that's how long ago it was. And it's a unique environment for sure. Unique in terms of just even how it's set up, but also in the fact that you are able to see your clients so often, and that it's integrated and part of their holistic treatment approach and plan. And you have a piece of the puzzle, and then there are other people there on staff specifically to help with other pieces of the puzzle, whereas someone in private practice, outpatient private practice, might not have those, or even agency out of outpatient doesn't have there are challenges and benefits to both, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is unique for you is you get to see very, very frequently those trends of how it can change any given session, of what they are um, experiencing and working through at any given time, and how that shows up in your sessions and how that shows up in the gameplay. So I think you have such a, which is why I wanted you to come on to the stream, is that you have such a unique, it's not unique in terms of, there are plenty of people who work in residential, obviously, you know, that's throughout the country and all of that. But I mean, we have had such powerful interactions in just personally playing, but then also some of the messages that we've gone back and forth, discussing some of the work that you're doing, and the championing, wow, that was really hard to say, the use of tools that speak your client's language, and that includes the digital. So I'm wondering, do you think there are any other aspects that might be unique to either your specific environment or just inpatient in general, regarding the use of digital tools that you think would be useful for our listeners?
I mean, it's definitely the frequency, like you were saying, being able to see them and being able to have those quick follow-ups, if you will. Because you might see at the beginning of one week how they're working through one thing. I'll use an example of Minecraft. I have a kid who, she was super focused on building. And one day she just left her unfinished house and she went to go explore. And something was going on in treatment with her where she was, moving along from friendships and not being sure where she was going to be placed, if she was going to be placed back home or if she was going to have to go to foster care, whatever the case was. But being able to say that, and I'm like, so why aren't you building? I'm asking her, and she's like, I don't know, I don't want to build right now. And then being able to focus that with, or pair that with, is it because you're nervous that you're not going to have a home and you feel kind of lost?
Mm-hmm.
And she was older, she's like 10, 11. So when I say older for our kids, but not older adult, but so that the frequency and just being able to really identify where they are in virtual reality, I think has a lot of trauma benefit with the different tools that you could use. Being able to regulate, maybe introduce a little bit in a small aspect of some of those trauma things in a virtual setting and being able to work through them. So this is really odd, but I had a kid who was afraid or had a trauma response to Kinder eggs.
Okay.
Because when she was younger, her mom would try to make things better by bringing her a little present of a Kinder egg.
Uh-huh.
And so, being able to work through that, if she were to go to a grocery store virtually, how would she react when she passed that aisle? We never got to that, but that would have been something that I would have loved to have been able to do,
Mm-hmm.
to work through that, because unfortunately Kinder eggs are like at every checkout aisle, and you're going to have to be able to not get frustrated or feel some sort of way when you see it.
Mm-hmm. We have, I have a question for you, but we also have a question in the chat, and I don't want it to get lost. I had someone during a training ask about Roblox in short-term residential settings in terms of safety and friending each other outside of the therapeutic setting and the dangers with that. Any thoughts?
I mean, just like with anything, learning to have those appropriate relationships and learning that you're not going to want to fully open yourself up to this random stranger that you're meeting, but there has to be a certain level of trust with the people that you engage with, even in a cashier setting, like you're going to trust that that person's going to give you the correct change. So I mean, like that, I see benefits like that. Roblox has tons of stuff that you could do with it, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you can explore, like you're saying, like your boundaries with friendships and making friendships out there, and you're doing it in a safe environment. What do I choose to share about myself, and what do I show about myself? And I think that that's amazing, right? Because trying to think of like what other aspect could you really get, in a safer environment outside of digital, and it's very hard. You would have to, have them try these things out real time. And I always say, like, if you go to school, like, I feel like kids, it's like you go to school and you make one mistake and that sets the tone for the rest of the year, how people view you. But in digital worlds, you can get real time feedback in a relatively safe environment. And if something is ever too stressful, you can block them. You can, log off the game. You can change servers. So I look at that as a huge aspect, for a positive in digital aspect.
And I think, I don't know, maybe part of what the question that person was asking also is about, so the specifics of short-term residential settings in terms of safety and friending each other outside of the short-term residential setting. And my experience has been that they have people who go into short-term residential setting at times can really connect with another person in there.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a good connection, and that can be a not good connection. But they're most likely going to find ways to stay connected. It doesn't take much to exchange their Snapchat username, their phone number, their whatever it is. So part of me wants to say, well, whatever the short-term residential center's rules are, then those are things that the therapists are going to have to try to at least uphold in some way. But a lot of it really isn't in our control. And if they want to be Roblox friends with each other, then I'm not sure there's much we can do about that. And two, they have, as long as the player knows the rules, not the rules, knows the settings, knows that they can block them, knows they can unfriend them, knows that they have control within that relationship and that connection, then, as Michael was saying, as well, they are able to just make decisions about that relationship along the way and whether or not they want to continue it, maybe even in easier ways than if someone had your phone number or your Snapchat or something like that. I don't know that there's much we can really do about that. Hopefully there are people in place who can help monitor whether or not that is a healthy relationship for that person, like their outpatient therapist or whatever that might be.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times when people are in treatment, they bond with one another, whether it's short term or long term, like my setting. They become that person that was like you, or they become that person that was like your best friend and able to grow with you. But I think it's important to learn how to sever relationships as well in a healthy way. Like we met each other in this unhealthy way. If we both feel that we're healthy enough, then we should continue. And that's always a challenge that I encounter with my clients, because they're like, they're my best friend. I was with them for a whole year. And I'm like, I get it. But, do you really think that this is going to be okay? Because you guys would sometimes gang up with each other against staff. When you guys were in certain different areas of levels of your treatment. But in regards to Roblox, like you were saying, there's only so much we can control. And I think I would encourage that over real time hanging out. Just so
and it opens up into so many. That's one of the things is people commonly say, oh, they're on the screens all the time, and now we're going to have that in therapy, or oh, they're having all these difficulties in these online relationships, and now we're going to talk about that in therapy. Yes, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to talk about it, think it through, start to explore, what do healthy relationships look like, and how do you take care of yourself in general, not just in digital, but in general in life. What are your own feelings of self-worth and identity and representation, and how can you engage in relationships that are appropriate? How can you put off the vibes, if you will, of health and self-knowledge of what it is, the kind of person you're going to then attract. And all of these things are really not only the interactions within the games that in the different programs that this can happen, but then also the conversations about their experiences can spark so many of these conversations, which then can also be in certain circumstances, of course, extended to their family of origin, and to have familial conversations about these things as well, obviously as appropriate. But it has a ripple effect out. These things that we understand about our clients through these interactions, the things that the clients understand about themselves and the world around them and how they fit into it, all has such a ripple effect out into many different aspects of life, I think.
Now, and going back to what you were saying about, we do need to practice those things. We do. Like, how are you going to get better at something if you continuously do it wrong? So in our setting, we have kids that might have a history of becoming overly angry when they lose in a video game. They're like, oh, that's because they have an addiction. And I'm like, whoa, calm the word, calm the word. And exactly. So, I'd be like, first of all, what are they trying to, do with this game? Why are they getting so angry? And a lot of time it's because they didn't have good impulse control anyway. Right. It was just evident in this game because you get heated at something you're controlling half, and then, you put a lot of time into it. So being able to use that digital tool to be able to say, okay, so just like when you get home and you start getting all revved up, like, I can stop them in the moment. Let's hit the home button. Let's do some deep breathing. Let's focus on where we're feeling it in our body and keep going. Mm-hmm. And we've had kids that used to throw things, like throw the whole entire controller when they would get mad. And now they'll just put it down, understand the use of the home button, and keep going. Now, that's not always available in online, but if they're not ready for that, I let the parents know, then don't allow that yet. They'll get there one day.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of just like a small joke, but it's like you're walking and you injure yourself, like maybe you hurt your ankle or something. It's like, oh well, never mind, we're never walking ever again because it was the walking that caused the ankle injury, and like Jess was saying, it's like cool. Like when I love when people say, yeah, you're going to use, games. That's what that's the issue. It's like, cool. We have something to work on then, it's like right away, we already know what medium we can use to be able to work through this. And it makes sense, right? Like think if using the injury example, if you do injure yourself, what do they always make you do? Physical therapy, exercises, building yourself back up, finding your tolerance level, taking it slow, exploring what hurts, what isn't good, what does work for you, and building yourself up.
What movements you're doing that are exacerbating and making it worse, and what are you doing that's making it better? I mean, that's a great example, Michael. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of that, because it's just like we always go back to, I always like to try and pull these, kind of physical examples in because, the medical field always says, well, if we can't see it on an x-ray, it doesn't exist. And so it's like the concepts are the same. And, when you Ayla said it perfectly when it came with the addiction part. I always love when they say that too, because it's like, oh, well, what if you have a kid who's reading, fantasy novels for 4 hours a day? Like, is that good for their daily functioning? Are we going to say they have a book reading addiction? Like, it's always the behaviors underneath, and it's just this medium and the theme of the platform, like you were saying, the competitive nature that's bringing out these poor impulse controls, that's bringing out some of these angry behaviors. And so I think it's good because it's like, cool, now we actually see it coming up and we can actually have conversations about it, we can actually work through it, rather than just saying like, okay, let's just create this atmosphere of anger, show me what anger looks like, and maybe it's not as genuine, whereas this is very genuine. I got that a lot working, especially with middle school boys, this idea of competition and games and how that was very difficult for them to sit and work through in a school setting nonetheless, and using games, because it is nothing but competition nonstop, to be able to work through some of those, wanting to throw the controller, getting super angry. but being able to say, hey, look, it's okay, guess what, we can hit play again, and be able to work through all of these things, and get them to really understand that, okay, hey, if I do lose, it's not the end of the world.
Mhm. And that there are ways to pause. There are
Yeah.
ways to integrate some regulation tools, whatever works for that person. There are ways to do it over.
Right.
That could be the entire game. That could just be a certain part of the map. That could be a certain quest, whatever it is, to think it through. Okay, this is how it went the last time. This is where I saw you get frustrated, or you said that you know were upset, or you threw the controller, or whatever that is. Like exploring what was going on, how that environment and that behavior came to be, and then figuring out other ways. Does that get your needs met? No, I got in trouble and I got my stuff taken away and my controller broke and I had to pay $60 for a new one. And like whatever the fallout of that might have been. Okay, so let's think that through. Where can things shift so that as you move forward, something like this doesn't happen again? Because clearly that's not what you were hoping for. And in terms of at least the controller being broken, maybe they were trying to make a statement. If they were making a statement and acting out for a statement, then what is that statement? What kind of it? I think so much of the work that we do, whether it's digital or otherwise, but certainly in digital, is what needs are being met. And I've given examples before in other streams, and I'm not going to give the same one, but of people making just huge assumptions about why somebody is using these tools, and not really taking the time, and therapists as well sometimes not taking the time and the energy to understand it's really entering their world and understanding what's going on for them. And there are so many opportunities for that in this play. We only have a few minutes left. We have about 5 minutes left. And as I say, I think every single week I want to keep talking. So perhaps we'll be asking you to come back if you're willing to do that. I would love to have you do that in a few months. I'm curious if you thought that there was something that would be really important for people to understand about what you do, how you do it, how you're thinking about all these things. What do you think that would be?
I think that's a super hard question, actually. And I know it sounds not that hard, but like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help the kid heal. And sometimes it might not look orthodox, it might not look traditional, but I'm always paying attention. We, therapist and client, are always learning and trying to get more information as to how they can live a healthier life, and how I could be a better clinician. And that's really what it is. Like, I might do something maybe that isn't the best, but then I'll learn and we'll keep going.
Well, isn't that life?
Yeah, right.
The important piece is that we are paying attention, and that we are evaluating. That's one of the things, and I say this particularly about digital play therapy, but I think in general I say this quite a bit, is I really do have tremendous respect and hold a lot of honor for therapists. We have so much to pay attention to in our interactions, and whether that's internal, ourselves, our own regulation, whatever we have going on, we have whatever's going on with the client, past, present, the present in the moment in the room or in the therapy session, and then you have whatever's going on like throughout their day. You have the big picture and you have the microcosm picture. You have the interaction between the two of you. Then you have whatever tools you're using on top of it and the interaction in there. I mean, if you did a diagram, it would have arrows, bidirectional arrows going in multiple directions. And these are all the things that we're attending to. in a session. And part of that process, I think, for a therapist who is being conscientious and ethical is to continually evaluate what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I hear that strongly in the message that you just gave. And I think that's, we don't have to be perfect, we don't have to know everything, but it's important for us to understand multiple aspects of the work that we're doing so that we can continue to improve. And that includes flexibility, that includes understanding that there might be ways that are different than the traditional to be able to meet those needs of our clients. And I just really appreciate the work that you're doing and you coming here and sharing it with us today. And I do hope that you'll come back. And
Yes.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure being here. It was super exciting.
yes,
Thank
same
you.
for us. So we will hopefully be able to match up at some conference or something soon. And then I also have a couple of things that I'm going to talk with you privately about. I would love for you to be part of a project that I have going on. So I'm going to be reaching out to you about that as well. Nothing like a cliffhanger. And please share your contact information or anything that you, any projects you have going on, anything like that with Michael, and then he can place it on the list under your YouTube video once he gets that posted. So please be sure to do that, because I have a feeling after listening to this, some people are going to want to get a hold of you and maybe pick your brain or do some consultation, some supervision. I think that would be really amazing. So thank you again for being here. Michael, I will see you in just a couple of days.
Yep.
And
you guys are going to have so much fun.
No, next time you need to come.
I will. Next time I will. Right now we're a little bit low with therapists, and that's really what it comes down to. But therapists are coming, and I'm excited.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for your time today, Ayla. I really appreciate it. And we will see you all in 2 weeks.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.